Part 3 of the Returning from Summer Hiatus special bonus episode.
We'll talk more of that in a future nugget of Zen episode. Tune in to today's Nugget of Zen for the really tight Zen-like moments of deep, profound thoughts. No matter what anyone thinks or believes, dear friends, we are all deeply subjective and relativistic creatures at the mercy of the flaws of our own minds, inherent urge to edit and updraft, and ultimately tango a little too hard with hubris. We are all guilty of remixing our own memories of our own memories. So let's not go pretending to be absolutely righteous about what we did or did not do, and what others did or did not do. What do we gain by that anyways? The slippery slope of uncertainty is an actual inherent aspect of the way our recall apparatus functions in this mysterious, lucid drifting of details in conscious and semi-unconscious and often irrational ways. We got to own up to that, and we've got to strive for sincerity in going, oh, you're right, I didn't really quite say that. Or if I said it, I didn't emphasize it enough, or whatever, and that just isn't in terms of how we remember. It's in terms of how things are in reality. I see a lot of claims. This object or label or collective of people, insert your favorite whatever the fuck here, is absolute, insert whatever the fuck judgmental thing you're going to want to put here. When they aren't, right? I'll put it to you this way. It's really quite interesting and curious that a lot of the same people that were adamantly arguing and fighting back and saying things like, it is wrong and unfair to say that all white people are racist, which it is. White people are not a monolith of racism. But some of those same people are now most certainly explicitly saying absolutist, monolithic things about science. All science is an evil, Satanist cult of blah, blah, blah. Okay. Are you going to pick a lane there? Are we going to build a better, more nuanced threading of that absurdity needle? Because you can't have it both ways. I digress. Speaking of which, I guess we have to have it both ways, right? Because no one is perfect. In a recent episode, I am sad to say, I totally failed to live up to my own rules of discourse. And while it was quite momentary, I momentarily commented on a particular on-air media personality and used a playground insult. And I have to own up to things, right? And I think I caught myself in the moment. But I want to publicly apologize now to them, to you, dear audience, and generally to the universe at large for that momentary failing. And I'll admit now, if I didn't then, I certainly had the thought, as I caught myself, that person is not stupid. I used the word stupid, and then I instantly said, you know what, no, I'm sorry, they're not stupid. And then I called them a fool, because I do believe they are. I don't know why they chose the path they have chosen, and that they continue to choose and to double down on. But the person I was discussing clearly has chosen to use an enviable and powerful platform of public discourse to spew so much malarkey, so much nonsense, so many verifiable, confirmable statements that are untrue, that in court multiple times they have been admonished as being nothing but entertainment of exaggeration. And they themselves have had to say in terms of legal defense that no intelligent person in their right mind would take their own commentary seriously. But you know what? They're not stupid. They're doing it on purpose. And they know that they're doing it. And they're doing it on purpose for a reason. And that frustrates the bejesus out of me. And that's why the lapse in standing up to my own, as brief as it was, as laughable as it was, because I immediately said, okay, he's not stupid. But there it is, folks. Okay. And I know, I completely understand. I run the risk of coming off the wrong way right here and right now. In attempting to redress my own poor choice of wording in a past episode, I can see how easily I may be accused of virtue signaling and all that sort of thing. But I'm genuinely apologizing, right? I ask those who come to the table, let's be real, let's be blunt, let's use some salty language and not get prissy about it. We can say frickety frickety frack, but let's not say horrible, evil, belittling things that lean towards intimidating and or threatening, right? Because that's nonsense, and there's a certain threshold upon which it becomes a violation of moral, ethical, and legal standards, right? And I'm not about that. Not that I'm a blind faith bootlicking, gotta follow all the rules either, because I'm not, dear friends. But there are plenty of basic fundamental laws that I'm quite in favor of, such as, and I'm not being facetious when I say this, I'm a big fan of thou shalt not kill. Why did I just drop that level of a tonality and reference right now? Why did I just get all biblical on my podcast audience? Oh, woe is me. Let's be really honest here, folks, right? Like, we all suck at being good humans. I'm not frivolously saying that. I have failed to be a good human. And if you're intellectually honest with me, you have also. We can get, all hardcore about it like Chunk does in Goonies, and go way back to our earliest, most primal sins from childhood. We don't need to. It would make this show way too long, and it's already at 84 minutes, 59 seconds. Oh my gosh. I'm going to go back and do an impromptu post-production edit and break this episode up into 2 parts. That doesn't mean I'm going to come back and do a second part now. When I end this show, I'm going to let it sit for a day. And then after that, I'm going to take it down. I'm going to break it up into 2 chunks. And I'm going to put it back up. But I digress. I made my apologies. I know that, I could sound like a fool. But we all can. And we have this in common. And if we, as I want to genuinely connect, doesn't everyone long for that? Even people most diametrically opposed in political or ideological opinion, we all genuinely long for connection. And therein is the ego trap of longing for connection so much that you sort of fall into blindly demanding that people blindly agree with you. Or take it as insult. I don't do that. I happily let people live their lives believing whatever nonsense they want to believe. If you want to believe that the world is flat and that there's a waterfall off which you might fall, great. If I ever make a bunch of money, which I have not yet, dear folks, but the more you listen to the show, the more the likelihood of that happening goes up. If I ever suddenly strike it rich, I will invite my favoriteest flat earthers. Let's go get a yacht and find that effing waterfall. Because I believe in your right to believe in whatever you want. Am I going to agree with you if I don't believe the same? No. And I'm not going to care what you think or how that makes you feel if I cannot agree with you. I cannot agree with certain things in a way that's very, very serious. and I'll just leave with you some in case you aren't aware, I cannot agree that Donald Trump is the savior of the world. I can't. It's intellectually repugnant to me, and I don't mean to be rude about it. It's just too obvious based on his actual, real-life, verifiable, undeniable court records. Never mind the shit that comes out of his mouth, because he talks mad shit. And he does. And I'm not saying that to belittle him. That's a hard, cold stone, undeniable fact. Some people love that about him. I do not value it. I try not to talk mad shit. I try to talk real things. And the things that he wants to make people believe have a long history of turning out to not be very real. And I'm not just blindly accusing him of that. I have a 5-year-long podcast track record of calling him out on all the things that were baloney. I can't even begin to say they were all. My show is the Cliff Notes. This is me trying to keep up with the amount of crazy things that are obviously, verifiably not true. There's a thing I need to reference, and I need to pull it up. I don't remember to get the wording right. It's a thing I wrote, so I'm not reading off a teleprompter, folks. I'm giving you my deepest, serious thoughts, and I just got to find where I got them written down. And I'm scrambling because I didn't think to pull this up earlier because it wasn't exactly something I thought I'd get around to reading. But here we are. Here we are nonetheless. As soon as it finishes loading, give me a second. There is, dear friends, I want you to take a moment to join me in contemplating this. There is a huge difference between the act of knee-jerkedly, automatically, autonomously dismissing anything and everything as fake news. I know that's a wordy sentence, right? But I'm drawing a line. There's a big difference between just saying everything is fake news. Anything I disagree with is fake news. I don't want to think about that, so it's fake news. And so there's a huge difference between all of that, and dare I say that's over there on the malarkey side of the fence, for reasons I've explained before, and I'll gladly explain again, like Ricky Ricardo coming home and asking Lucy to explain some things. Sorry for the random interjection. There is a huge difference between blindly rejecting anything and everything as fake news and making the factual discernment and declarative statement that something is truly, categorically, demonstrably false. And that, my friends, is not just word play. Words effing matter. They also totally don't, and we need to be letting them go and abdicating them, because it's why we get butthurt and argue and fight instead of unite and heal. But those two things coexist as true simultaneously as once at all times. Words effing matter, and they are also precisely one of the things we need to transcend. So, having said all that, let us remind ourselves that we are frail, relativistic creatures with opinions. None of us, especially any of us that do not have a big-time budget to hire people, to have a research department and a writing team, none of us are know-it-all, genius-level experts about anything in particular, I don't think. Unless, plenty of people out there have got master's degrees and blah, 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 and that's great, and I respect that. But there's also, as the pie chart quite humorously points out, plenty of shit we don't know about. So, if that is the case, let's remember and remind each other that, the best course of action is to let ye who is without sin cast the first stone. Am I right? And that's We all get frustrated. We all get worked up to the point of potentially snapping, and we're reaching for the easy jab, reaching for the petty insult, reaching for the heavy-ass rock to bitch smack you upside the head like Cain bashed Abel. And guess what, folks? Here's a central pillar of my show. Maybe, just maybe, that is something that the system wants. What is the system? The system of oppression. Which system of oppression? The system of oppression that is centuries old, that y'all are waving your flags and ringing your bells about. The system of oppression that you think dear old Donald Trump is fighting against, which I don't really think is. I think he's a puppet with a puppet master. I think he's complicit and he's playing a part. That system of oppression creates a million different ways to distract us and to engage us in treadmills of conflict. Right? In which the central activity is literally getting Americans to hate Americans, insert your country here, to hate your fellow countrymen, insert the name of your fellow countrymen here, over ideology that is riddled with neuro-linguistic programming about us versus them and I am better than them kind of programming. That's the agenda, and it's clearly happening because all I see as to the ability that I have to perceive American culture, it is riddled with Americans jokingly hating on, actually hating on, and trending towards violence their fellow Americans over what? Nowadays, mostly ideological disagreements and arguments over ideological constructs about how to properly be, in the most self-righteous ways, a good American. And that's an absurd thing to get caught up in, I think. And that's exactly, no matter how you slice Trump up, that's perceptually the core of his political modality. Therefore, I can't get behind it, right? Philosophically, as we come around the final bend, I am personally of the conviction that there is now in this material world, no one that is so morally superior that they deserve to be idolized, right? There is no one so spiritually advanced that they don't have more spiritual work to do, and that should be poo-pooing in other people's throats judgment and oppressive malarkey. And yet we find ourselves increasingly agitated in a socio-political environment, a gestalt, as I pointed out in the past episode, a gestalt that has architectural ingredients at play, some of which add up to a left versus right echo chamber psyop double reverse pincer maneuver of oppression and manipulation, right? As I've said before, the political gestalt we currently find ourselves in is the direct result of a double echo chamber psyop pincer maneuver that's been ongoing since Reagan was in office and arguably centuries before, not just, curiously, the last 40 years. And this includes the utilization of pasty-faced, orange spray-tanned puppets claiming to be the only person capable of fixing it all for the purposes of pushing towards one extreme or the other the world and its ideological trends. Now, we can get off on all kinds of crazy tangents, but I've been rambling for ages, and this episode is already way too long. So I want to casually reference here the fractal nature of reality, right? I've talked about it before. I'll talk about it again. Why is it important? Because the puppet masters, as I got into a conversation not too long ago, the puppet masters aren't what we should be focusing on, right? If there are puppet masters, which I argue there probably are, they aren't the people that we're being served up to on a silver platter with pictures and names and it's a little too obvious. And ultimately, it doesn't matter because they probably have puppet masters hiding in the shadows behind them. And if reality is truly fractal in nature, which I posit to you, dear friends, I could be wrong, but I really, really, really think after a certain set of lifetimes worth of questioning and contemplating this and comparing and contrasting against other theories, I think it is truly, in the most profoundest ways, fractal in nature. I think reality is an infinitely diverse, unfolding, fractal algorithm of all probable outcomes being made manifest through the process of divine manifestation. As in, creation wasn't some long ago thing that happened and is now complete and done, as I've pointed out to you before, dear friends, but an ever-flowing, ever-frothing, ever-fucking happening fractal unfolding that's perpetually happening here and now. And that's important. More important than the dichotomous, never-ending argument about which one is most righteous, left or right. Because one is an unsolvable political ideological puzzle that leads to nothing besides more unsolvable political ideological puzzles, which are engineered to create conflict. Why? Because some people profiteer on conflict, and that's enough reason. Why perpetuate that when we can be investigating all of the other dynamic things going on, right? That are implied from or through or that we can come to understand through the lens of a fractal understanding of the functional nature of reality and how that applies to ego traps and ego systems and hubris and our own self-destructive, self-undermining through these system of oppressions. Because as we finally come full circle at 100 minutes and 10 seconds, forgive me, folks, I guess I had a lot to say today. As we come full circle, not because Inner Worlds told me to say that, they didn't, right? They came along and said something in a beautiful way that I had been feeling and thinking and seeing in reality and going, boom, I like the way they express it even better than the way I had put it before. So I'm going to run with their expression, and that's this. I'll leave this for you, friends. The rest of the opening blurb from Inner Worlds, Outer Worlds, and I quote, "The true crisis in our world, it's not social, political, or economic. Our crisis is a crisis of consciousness, an inability to directly experience our own true nature, an inability to recognize this same nature in everyone and in all things. Realizing that there is only one divine consciousness, it becomes clear that to awaken one's true self, one must awaken all beings. There are innumerable sentient beings in the universe. I vow to help them all to awaken. My personal, individual imperfections are inexhaustible, and yet I vow to overcome them all. The Dharma is unknowable, and yet I shall vow to know it the way of awakening is unattainable. I vow to attain it. Not because it's some pretty feather I'm going to put in my cap, but because, dear friends and listeners, and this is the critical key at the center of the whole puzzle, if we can heal ourselves, and we can heal each other, and we can heal the entire species, we can heal all those we have labeled bad guys. Instead of doing the absolutely absurdly ridiculous thing that most of us have previously in past lives insisted on doing, which is lower ourselves, stoop ourselves to becoming bad guys vis-a-vis the venom and violence of vengeance. Right? Why should we allow ourselves to make ourselves become murderers in the act of murdering murderers as a means to punish them for their act of murdering, which only renders us murderers? Why should we do that, right? Justice is one thing, but becoming a self-appointed assassin is something else. And justice, dear friends, in a metaphysical world includes, dare I say it, healing. The spiritual warfare that everyone's so concerned about is precisely about whether or not the human species collectively aligns itself intradimensionally, multidimensionally, to its multifaceted inner self and its collective spiritual multifaceted self externally. That's what they're distracting us from. That's what the war is about. And by jumping in with emotional, intellectual, spiritual, and physical violence to fight that war, we keep ourselves neglecting. We keep ourselves in the act of being distracted from. We keep ourselves busy butchering each other instead of healing each other, which is the solution to the spiritual warfare. That's the solution, folks. It isn't to go chasing with hubris the warfare they're fear-mongering you about, but to turn inwards and relinquish that through healing for the purposes of absolving the trauma at the root cause of all the socio-spiritual, psychokinetic ills and pains and disease. And, oh, that wasn't the loop I wanted to play. But anyways, you get my drift. As always, friends, may peace, love, and grooviness blossom in your hearts. Namaste, and thank you for listening.